Well, moving on now, France's new prime minister has not even formed a new government yet or really started in his new job, but he's already facing historically low approval ratings. According to a survey carried out by French polling firm IFOP, a whopping 66% of respondents said that they are already unhappy with his performance. Those are the lowest ratings that the polling firm says it's seen for a new prime minister in several decades. Well, Francois Bayrou is certainly hoping to change that when he reveals the picks for his new government, potentially this weekend, and he insisted definitely before Christmas. For more on that, France 24's international affairs editor Philip Turle joins me now on set. Hi, Philip. So this is just the latest chapter, of course, in what's been a really months-long, almost unprecedented political saga here in France, at least in recent decades. Can you start by putting this all into context, then?
Okay, well, politics is a cruel game, Erin, and we're just witnessing that here in France. Basically because Emmanuel Macron's been in power since 2017. He was re-elected in 2022, but without an overall majority in the National Assembly, which means it's very difficult for him to push through any legislation because he doesn't have the necessary number of MPs. 289 is what you need to be able to have an overall majority and do what you like, basically, and push through the reforms you want. So he called snap elections after doing badly in the European polls earlier this year. He called snap elections in June, which he wanted to use to reboost his popularity in France and rebuild that majority. It all backfired on him disastrously. And since then, he's been trying really hard to name a prime minister who has a consensus of all of the MPs in the National Assembly. We had Michel Barnier, who was the prime minister between the 5th of September and the 5th of December, who was voted out after a vote of no confidence, where the far left and the far right, who actually hate each other, came together to get rid of Michel Barnier because they hated him even more. So we're back to square one with a new prime minister now who is called Francois Bayrou, who's a veteran politician in France, a former minister of education under Jacques Chirac, who's been tasked with forming a new government, and hopefully will get the members of the ministers of that new government today or at least before Christmas. But it's a very complicated task for Francois Bayrou. I'll tell you why. Because Francois Bayrou is from a party called the Democratic Movement, the MoDem, as they call it in France. He only has 36 seats in the National Assembly, which certainly is a lot less than he needs, 289, even with Emmanuel Macron's MPs behind him, who are numbering 93 to get through that legislation. So they need support from the left, the socialists, for example, from the communists, from the Ecology Party. But they're all saying, no, what we need to do is to get rid of Emmanuel Macron completely, call for fresh elections, start from scratch, bring in a new president who will then have fresh elections to the National Assembly next year in June, and we will then be able to build a new coalition. They all think that they would do better if there were fresh legislative elections. They would get that overall majority. It's not certain, but certainly the far right, Marine Le Pen, thinks she would do incredibly well, and the far left of Jean-Luc Mélenchon also thinks that he would do incredibly well. They want Emmanuel Macron gone, and that's why we're in these political uncertain times right now.
Now, one of the things that will perhaps decide or give an early idea of whether or not his government will survive is, of course, the makeup of his government. Who do you think could get these ministerial jobs?
Well, many MPs say they don't really want to be in the government because they will be typecast as being in a government that is not going to last very long, basically, because even the pollsters in France say the chances that Francois Bayrou's government will last longer than that of Michel Barnier are not much. The most important thing for Francois Bayrou is to vote through a budget for 2025. The budget that was proposed by Michel Barnier was the reason that the government was collapsed, was given this vote of no confidence, and that is what Francois Bayrou fears. So he's trying to nominate some MPs who would be acceptable to everybody. We have the name of Elizabeth Borne, who was a former prime minister under Emmanuel Macron. She may be part of the new government, as may be the former interior minister Gérald Darmanin. There is the current interior minister who is someone who sort of leans more to the far right. He's called Bruno Retailleau. He may well keep his job and be given a new mandate because Francois Bayrou sees him as someone who is capable and more seductive towards the far right. But it's all a game of seduction, trying to keep on board the different persons, the different political factions, so that they don't vote down the government a second time and we'll come crashing back to square one again.
The saga definitely continues then, to say the least. Philip Turle, thank you very much.